What's going on, you guys? My name is Matt, and welcome back to Matt Does a Lot. My job is to tell you about the most interesting air Pokemon card sales I saw on eBay this week, and your job is to watch and enjoy. I gotta tell you, it's the highlight of my week when I get to sit down in front of this camera and talk to you about these air Pokemon cards. I've been absolutely loving the feedback that I've been receiving from you guys, and also I just hit 200 subscribers, which I think is absolutely insane. So thank you guys all for the support. And let's get right into it. If you're a returning viewer, you might realize that this format is a little bit different this week. I thought it would be fun to have a top 10 list for the greatest value increases. Basically, that shows how much more valuable the error card is than the non-error version of the card. Starting off this week, we have a Rockets admin from Pokemon Celebrations, and this is an obstruction error. You can see the error is pretty evident there on the card on the right. I don't know exactly what causes this, but you can see that it kind of looks like the card's almost deteriorating a little bit. And in a CGC 9, this card sold for $19.99. Next up, we have a Garchomp Holo from Hidden Fates. And this is a labeled an off-center card, but I think PSA made a mistake. So typically how you can tell if it's an off-center card or a miscut is if you see an alignment dot. And you can see in the bottom right of the card there's clearly an alignment dot. So I believe PSA actually made an error on this card. But regardless, in a PSA 9, this card sold for $82. Next up, we have a Lance's Charizard V with a misaligned texture. Now, I'm still pretty new to misaligned textures, especially with newer Pokemon cards. And when I was looking, I could not see any misaligned parts of the card, but I did see several parts that were different. It looks like different smudges or dots on the card. I'll put arrows there right now to show you what I was seeing. But in a CGC 8.5, this card sold for $19.99. Next up, we have a Team Rockets Dark Dragonite with the non-holo number 5 error. Now, this is not to be confused with the hit classic Mambo number 5. Such a dumb joke. For this error, you have to look in the bottom right corner of the card. So the number that shows what card it is in the set is supposed to be 2282. That is reserved for the non-holo, but there was several cards that got created that have 582 as a non-holo. And so this is a repeating error. This card sold for $125 this week and is also number 7 on our list of error value increases. Next up, we have a Top Sun Gyarados with the no number error. So you can see on the right card there should be the number 130 in the pink box. That is to indicate what card it is or what card number it is. And that is missing. This is a repeating error, and this was the most expensive no number error I saw this week. And this sold for $314. Next up, we have a classic base set Diglett with the rotated symbol error. You can see on the line where it has dig as the attack, the fighting symbol is rotated 90 degrees to the left. And this is a repeating error, and it sold for $10.50. In order to film these videos, I need to search eBay a lot to find the most interesting error card sales. And there are a couple things I come across that really piss me off, and I want to talk about it today. Or I should say, I want to show you a little skit. So why don't you watch this 45-second clip that I put together. That took way longer than I care to admit to create, but I was very happy with how it turned out. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Next up, we have a Mewtwo GX from Hidden Fates, and this has a printer hickey. You can see there's nothing on the front side of the card. It's actually the back corner of the card that has the printer hickey, and this really did not add much value to the card. Typically, the card sells for around $45, and this one sold for $47 this week. Next up, we have a CGC 7.5 yellow border e-reader filler card. Now, I have to admit, I really don't know too much about these cards. I know these are sought after from some collectors, but personally, I really don't know too much about them. I know they're not supposed to be slipped into packs, but they are, and people are able to pull them and get them graded. And they definitely sell for a good amount of money. So in a CGC 7.5, this sold for $250 this week. Next up, we have a base set Blastoise with the no stage error. If you direct your attention to the top right corner of the card, you'll see where it's supposed to say stage 1. That is smudged out. This is a repeating error. And in a PSA 7, this card sold for $238. Now we have another stage error Blastoise, but in a PSA 8, and this sold for $314. Next up, we have a Scyther from Jungle Set with the no symbol error. Now, typically, I see around 8 to 12 no symbol errors from Jungle Set pop up in sales on eBay, but I decided to only talk about one this week. And this one sold for the most. This one sold in a PSA 9 for $86.50. Next up, we have a Pokemon Stadium Danon Mewtwo with the mother error. Wait, I think I got that wrong. It's actually the missing foil error. I really didn't know too much about this. I searched some online forums and saw that there's supposed to be a hollow layer on the card, and there's either a regular hollow or a gold hollow, and this one is missing that layer entirely. So this is a non-hollow card, which is a recognized error. And there was 2 people that bid on this week, and it sold for $61. Next up, we have a Koro Shining Mew with a miscut. And you'll see this card sold for a lot lower than the market value, and I believe that is due to the condition of the card. The back of the card was pretty damaged, and it looks like the edges were kind of fraying a little bit. But this card sold for $83.56. Next up, we have a Ball Guy Trainer card with a miscut. So with this, you can actually see that the bottom portion of the card, the text is cut off a little bit, and there is the addition of a card on top of it that was on the uncut sheet. So pretty cool miscut, and someone got this for a good price. It was listed for $5, but had a best accepted offer price of $4. Next up, we have a base set Hitmonchan with a Hollow Bleed. Now, if you're familiar with Hollow Bleeds, you will know that finding a Hollow Bleed in base set is pretty rare. So it's always cool to see it come across in auction. But this week, I have to give a shout out to the eBay seller Rookie Bob 4033. He sold like 6 or 7 different vintage Hollow Bleeds that I listed in this week's auction recap. So shout out to him. Very cool cards, and this card actually comes in at number 6 with our value increase scale. It sold for $120 and had a value increase of 1,500%. Next up, we have a Raichu from Burning Shadows with an off-center error. But, as I showed before, PSA can make mistakes, and if you look in the top right corner of the card, you'll see a cheeky little alignment dot, which means that PSA was wrong again, and this should be listed as a miscut. But either way, in a PSA 9, this card sold for $53. Next up, we have a Japanese reverse hollow Moltres from Pokemon 151, and this is a Hollow Bleed error. Now, one thing I thought was funny, you can see under the description of what a Hollow Bleed is, it says not to be confused with a reverse hollow, but this is actually a reverse hollow bleed. So you can see the Pokemon symbol that is highlighted in the card, which is part of the reverse hollow, is actually overlapping on the bottom of the art box. So I believe this is technically a reverse hollow bleed. And this card sold for a very cheap $2, which is actually cheaper than the non-error version of this card. Next up, we have a Pikachu Black Star promo with a crimp error. Now, a crimp error is either where they're sealing a pack or the plastic that a promo comes in, and it gets misaligned in the crimping machine, and part of the card actually gets crimped. Now, these are more common with promo cards, but it still adds a little bit of a premium. This card sold for $13.50 this week. Next up, we have a Mew from Delta Series Pop 5 with an upside down error. So you can see the back of the card, the Pokeball is upside down. Now, I believe that this is such a repeating error that there is not a corrected version. I could be wrong there, but I did not put a non-error card there because it would just be the Pokeball right side up. But either way, this card sold for $92 this week, which you can see is way below the typical price for this card, which goes for around $170. Next up, we have another filler card. You can see it has the white border and just the blank part of the card. Again, really don't know too much about these, but this one sold for $91.16. And you can see I actually did compare it to the non-air price, which I don't know what to compare it to, so I probably shouldn't have done that, but it definitely adds quite a premium for this card. And yeah, $91 for a blank Pokemon card is pretty crazy. I was just thinking to myself that I had not seen a D.offending error come up on eBay since I've started filming these videos, I believe. So what this error is, you can look where it says Poison Sting on the card on the right. Where it says defending, there's actually a period after the D. So whoever was making this up accidentally added an extra period. And this is a repeating error. You can see it is pretty rare, especially for the price that it sells at. This typically goes for around $3.25 for the non-error, but it sold for $306.75 this week, which is absolutely incredible. That's a 9,338% increase and is number 2 this week on our list of error increases. I also thought it was kind of funny. If you look at the non-error version of this card, it looks like there is some sort of ink error on Beedrill's wing there. And I got this from the price charting website itself, so I thought that was pretty funny. Next up, we have a Team Rocket's Dark Rapidash with a pretty sizable printer hickey. You can see there's nothing on the front of the card, but on the back of the card, in the top left corner, it has that red ring around it, and that's usually the indicator that it was a bigger printer hickey. Sometimes it's just a little dot, but when it has that red border, that is a sign that it was a larger obstruction that got in the way of the printing process. And in a CGC 6, this sold for $9.50, which I think is a pretty good price for this card. Next up, we have a PSA 9 Ancient Mew card with a Nintendo error. So if you're not familiar with this error, on the bottom of the card, it's supposed to say Nintendo, but they left out the second N. And so it spells Nintendo. And this is a repeating error. I'll typically see it be for sale around 3 or 4 times every week. And this one, in a PSA 9, sold for $198. Next, we have a Noctowl with a missing ink error. Now, this one's very interesting. You can see the probably top 1/5 of the card is just very faded. It looks like definitely during the printing process that the printing machine ran out of ink. And so that's why it is a different color. And this one typically goes for around $3.18, but it sold for $56.02. Making it the number 3 card on our error value increase list, with an increase of 1,662%. Next up, we have a Poliwhirl from Pokemon 151 with the square corner error. So typically, if you see square corners, you have to think that it is an NFC card or not factory cut. But this can actually happen in the factory, especially when just 2 of the corners are squared. And this card sold for $10 this week and was the first runner-up. So it was number 11 on our list of error value increases with 910%. Next up, we have a Blaine's Charizard from Gym Challenge. And this card is actually the corrected version. So you can see under Roaring Flames, the first fire symbol there. In most versions of this card is actually a fighting symbol. And I believe it was just the last print run where it was actually corrected. And that makes the corrected version more valuable than the error version of this card. And this card sold raw for $385. And you can see the condition of the card is very good. So congrats to the buyer on this one. Here we have Rookie Bob 4033 coming in clutch again. Here are the rest of the Hollow Bleeds that I mentioned. So here we have a base set Poliwrath with the Hollow Bleed. You can see there's quite a bit of sparkles showing on the rest of the card. And this card sold for $50 this week. Next up, we have an Aerodactyl from Fossil Set with another Hollow Bleed. And this one sold for $75. Next up, we have a base set Clefairy with another Hollow Bleed. But this one was actually number 5 on our list for the air value increase. This sold for $150 and had a 1,543% increase. Here we have a Jolteon from Jungle Set with a Hollow Bleed, and this one sold for $85. And I find it interesting that all of these different Hollow Bleeds come from different sets. You have Fossil, Jungle, and Base Set, which I think is very interesting, and I would like to know where Mr. Bob got all these cards from, because they're very cool. And to wrap up these vintage Hollow Bleeds, we have a Base Set Raichu, which sold for $70. Next up, we have a Shadowless Dragonair with a Rainbow Ink Smear error. So if you look under the slam portion of the card, where it says number, that is the U is actually smudged out, and this is a repeating error. And I actually saw one of these cards for sale this week, but it was not listed as an error. It was listed for $20, and I was very interested, but the card was not in the best shape. And so I offered a lower price, and the seller did not accept. So I did not end up getting the card. But either way, I think it's a very cool card. And this one sold for $35 this week. Next up, we have a PSA 8 Dragonite V with a miscut. Now this one, PSA did get right. You can see in the top right corner, there is a white alignment dot. So happy to see they got one of these right. And this one sold for $32.50. I gotta tell you, I always love showing the cheaper miscut cards. I think it's so fun to be able to kind of get an error card and not have to spend a lot of money to kind of get into the hobby. You can see that this Grass Energy sold for $4 and actually has 2 alignment dots, which I think it makes a lot more valuable. So you can see in the top right corner and the bottom right corner that there are 2 black alignment dots. So congrats to the buyer of this card. I think that's very cool. Next up, we have a Zapdos from Fossil Set with the non-hollow evolution box misprint. So you can see the top left corner of the art box there. So that would typically be where the evolution box should be, but if you know anything about Zapdos, it has no other evolutions. So this is a repeating error, and this sold for $10 this week. Next up, we have a Magnezone V-Star from Lost Origin with a miscut. Now, if you look at the front of the card, you can look very hard and you will not see an alignment dot. But flip it over and you will see the alignment dot in the bottom left corner. So again, this is a miscut. And this card sold for $9.99. Next up, we have a Vileplume with a yellow screen error. Now, this one I did not know was a repeating error, but there's actually a name for these type of errors. It is called the yellow screen hollow. And you can see on the bottom right portion of the hollow box there, there's just a yellow screen. I think they named it perfectly. And this is a very, very cool card. It looks like it's in great shape. And this one sold for $180. Now, if you compare that to the $10.88 for the non-error version, this card had a 1,554% increase, which lists it at number 4 this week on our error value increase list. Next up, we have a Haunter from Fossil Set with the blue stain error. Now, this is a classic in the misprint community, and I always love seeing him show up for sale. So if you look at the art box of the card, that to the right of Haunter, you can see there is a smear there, which is actually blue ink that goes across the hollow. And in a PSA 5, this card sold for $85. Next up, we have a Tyranitar V alt art. And if you look at it, look at the front of the card, you will not see any errors. Well, if you flip the card over, you will see about 15 tiny little printer hickeys. I don't know what the heck happened in the printing process there, but it's kind of peppered all over the back of the card. And that really didn't add too much value to this card. Typically sells for around $81, and this one sold for $85 this week. Next up, we have a base set Blastoise with the red dot error. So you will see that on the Hydro Pump portion of the card, there are 3 water symbols, and on the leftmost water symbol, there is a red dot. And this is actually a repeating error. In a PSA 9, this sold for $408, and it really did not add too much value to the card. It's only an 8% increase over the non-error version of this card. Next up, we have a base set 2 Golding with a miscut. And you can see on the back of the card, in the bottom left corner, you have that alignment dot. So that is the indicator. And this card didn't sell for that much this week, compared to some of the other cards we had listed. But it sold for $12.95. And if you compare that to the $1.20 non-error version, This was a 979% increase and number 10 on our list of value increases. Next up, we have a Magneton from Neo Revelation with the double hollow variant. So if you compare the card on the right to the card on the left, the way you can tell it's a double hollow is you can see that the outline of Magneton, there is no white border around it. There is a white border on the card on the left. It varies from card to card to kind of see if it's a double hollow or not. And to the untrained eye, it will not look any different. But this card sold for $36.43. Next up, we have a Tentacool from Fossil Set with not one Hickey, not two, but three printer Hickeys, and two of them are in the art box. So you can see on the left of the card, it looks like there's almost a fang bite on it, which is pretty cool. And then the third printer Hickey is right below Tentacool. And this card sold for $15 this week and had an 1100% increase, which makes it number 8 on our list of value increases. Next up, we have a Graveler from Fossil Set, and this is also a printer Hickey in the art box, and I'm labeling this one as the Rock Hickey. You can see it actually kind of looks like a little rock that is meant to be there on the card. It's on the lower left portion of the art box. And this card sold for $20 this week and had a value increase of 1,036%, which puts it at number 9 on our list. Next up, we have the not factory cut or NFC portion of the video. I always like to take one listing from eBay that is not factory cut and talk about it. And here we have one of every energy symbols from base set, and they're all square cuts. They seem to be all pretty well centered. Sometimes when you're cutting an uncut sheet, they will choose to have it be misaligned or miscut. And you can see, compared to the non-error versions, I really don't know what to say. You could pick up all 5 of these energy cards for pretty cheap, but since they are not factory cut, I will not be listing this on the error value increase this week. And all 5 of these cards sold for $24.95. And now, if you are astute and paying attention, you will see that the number 1 listing is missing from this list, and that is the one I'm going to talk about right now. Here we have a Totodile from Pokemon 151 with an absolute crazy miscut. So you can see something happened in the printing process where a piece of paper from the uncut sheet got folded over, and then the card got cut. And so when the person opened up this card, it was flipped open, which is just, I don't know, I've never seen a card like this before. And that price really does reflect it too. You can see it had 28 bids and ended up selling for $162.78. Now this card typically goes for around 99 cents. It's not really a special card. And so that has the error value increase of over 16,000. And obviously puts that at number 1 on our error value increase list. I think that is just such a cool card, and congrats to the seller and the buyer of this card. And that wraps it up for this week. I really appreciate if you made it to the end here. Like I said before, I'm having a lot of fun filming these videos, and I do hope that you are enjoying them. Please subscribe, like the video. It lets me know that you guys are enjoying these videos, and I will see you next week. Take care.